Hello everyone. So today we will discuss Brownian motion. In the last lecture we have discussed random walk. Brownian motion is basically a generalization of random walk. In random walk, our state space as well as our time space, that is the index set, both were discrete. Now in Brownian motion we are going to make them continuous. So we are allowing them to be continuous. How would we achieve that? So in random walk, if this was my 0 point, initial point, then after every one time unit the particle would move either to right or to left and it would cross a distance of exactly 1 unit, right? That was the assumption in random walk. So now we would relax that assumption. See, when we made interest accumulation continuous, what did we do? Instead of saying that the interest is paid say monthly, quarterly, yearly, we made the time interval very small. We said that the interest is paid momentarily, like every moment. So the time interval became continuous. Same thing we are going to do here. So instead of saying that the particle moves after one time unit, we will say it will move after a very small time delta t, and instead of saying that the particle covers distance of exactly 1 unit, we will say in every step it covers very small distance delta x, and we would let this delta t and delta x both to go to 0, and if that happens then the process would have continuous time as well as continuous state space. Because delta t is going to 0, the movement would become continuous in time, and because delta x is going to 0, any value on the axis is possible, so it would become continuous state space process. Okay. Now how do we achieve this mathematically? Whatever I am saying is quite vague. We need to make it more rigorous, more precise. So I am going to give some equations, but again this is just to give you an idea. You have studied Brownian motion in detail in your stochastic process course, so I am not going to go into the mathematical details of it. I will just give you a rough idea of how Brownian motion can be obtained from random walk, and then we would study a few properties of it. Okay. So in random walk we defined the process as yt, and we said that yt could be written as sum over I going from 1 to t xi, where xi could take values +1 and -1 with certain probabilities. For a symmetric random walk, we assumed that probabilities to be half, correct? So now in Brownian motion, we are going to have a generalization of symmetric random walk. So what do we have? Now instead of xi being +1 and -1, I am going to have delta x as the size of each movement, correct? And instead of moving after one time unit, the particle is going to move after every delta t time. Okay. So now while defining the Brownian motion, we would still keep these xi's with us. Okay. Just that we have to remember that now the movement size is delta x. So I would write this yt as delta x times x1 plus x t by delta t. We'll write integer part of it. Okay. So what am I doing? These xi's are either +1 or -1. So the delta x movement can be either in positive direction or in negative direction. Delta x is common to all. And how many steps I have? That would depend on t upon delta t, because delta t is the time interval after which one step is taken. Okay. Now as a result, what would happen to the mean and variance of this process? So mean would still remain 0 because we are taking symmetric random walk. So each xi will have mean 0. So expectation of yt is 0. And variance of yt, now I would have delta x whole square times variance of each of these, sum of variance of each of these. We know that variance of each xi is 1. So this simply becomes t by delta t. Okay. So variance is again a function of time, and hence the process is not stationary. Okay. Now we said initially that we have to allow delta x and delta t to both go to 0, then we will get Brownian motion. Okay. So if both go to 0 at the same rate, then what happens? If delta x goes to 0 and delta t goes to 0, both at the same rate, then because I have delta x square in the numerator, my variance of yt would go to 0. So basically, I won't have a random process, it would be a degenerate thing. So it's of no interest to us. Hence, we have to skillfully choose the rates. So what we can do is, we can take delta x to be some constant times square root of delta t. Okay. So we take ratio of delta x to square root delta t as constant. Then what would happen? Then my variance of yt becomes sigma square delta t into t by delta t. So this is approximately equal to sigma square t. Okay, the integer part I am removing, so I am saying approximately. Okay. So now my variance of yt converges to sigma square t as delta t goes to 0. So this choice of relationship between delta x and delta t does give me something random and which is of interest to us. Okay. So we don't let delta x and delta t to go to 0 at the same rate. Delta x goes to 0 at a slightly slower rate. Okay. And now we have a process which is obtained as the limiting form of the random walk. Okay, so now that we are in the continuous setup, ideally we should change our notation. Subscript is used when we are in the discrete setup, when we have like y1, y2, etc. So now because time is continuous, we should write y of t. Okay, so suppose yt is a Brownian motion, then what are the properties that it satisfies? Okay, we have not yet formally defined what Brownian motion is, but we have just now said that it's basically limiting form of a random walk, limiting form of a symmetric random walk, where limit is taken as delta x and delta t both go to 0 at different rates. Okay. So now, what can I say from whatever we have seen so far? See, xi's are IID. Every xi is either plus 1 or minus 1. And we know that sum of independent and identically distributed random variable, we can say something about some of these things via central limit theorem, and it tells us that this sum would then go to normal distribution. Okay, so yt for every t will have normal distribution with mean 0 and variance sigma square t. Variance is coming from here. Okay, so this is true for every t in the index set. And if we have some time points, let's say 0 less than t1 less than t2 up to say tn, then yt1 minus y0, yt2 minus yt1 up to ytn minus ytn minus 1, all these are called increments, and we are going to say that these are independent increments. Okay, these are independent increments. We did see some justification about why they are independent, because they are actually dependent on different xi's and different xi's are independent. So we are having strict inequality in this time frame here. So I have 0 here, tn here suppose, then t1, t2, etc. So the first increment is over this interval, second is over this interval, third is over this interval, and so on. So since they are disjoint increments, xi's involved in them are different. For example, in yt1 minus y0, x1, x2, xt1 are involved. When I consider yt2 minus yt1, xt1 plus 1, xt1 plus 2, up to xt2 are involved. So the set of xi's for each of them is different, and because xi's are independent, these also become independent. So the increments are independent of each other. And now the third property, that is stationarity of increments. So it says that distribution of y t plus s minus yt, this increment depends only on s. It does not depend on t. Okay, that is actually stationarity of the increments. Whether you are taking a leap in time here or whether you are taking a leap in time here, it doesn't matter. As long as the length of the leap is same, the distribution remains the same. Okay, so this is stationarity. So these are important properties of Brownian motion. Let us try to formally define Brownian motion. So again, I know you have done this, so I am just trying to revise. A stochastic process yt, a stochastic process yt where t belongs to some index set I, generally we take this as 0 to capital T, is said to be a Brownian motion or a Wiener process is said to be a Brownian motion or a Wiener process if it satisfies following condition. If it satisfies following conditions. What are the conditions? The same conditions which we have already been discussing. So it starts from 0. So y of 0 is 0. The initial starting point is at 0. Then the process yt has stationary and independent increments. Has stationary and independent increments. We saw the reason behind that. And for every t, yt follows normal distribution with mean 0 and variance sigma square t. That is the third condition. So if a process satisfies these three conditions, then it is called as Brownian motion or a Wiener process. Okay. In particular, if sigma is 1, then it becomes a standard Brownian motion. Okay, so just like standard normal random variable. So if sigma is equal to 1, then it is known as standard Brownian motion. Okay, so if you have some Brownian motion, then you can convert it to standard Brownian motion. So you can define zt as yt upon sigma. It would have the first property, obviously second property also it would have, because sigma is anyway constant, so you are just scaling, so that won't affect the distribution significantly. And because now you are dividing by sigma, variance of zt is just t. Okay, as a result zt is always a standard Brownian motion. So any Brownian motion can be converted to standard Brownian motion by dividing by the square root of variance. So this is exactly parallel to what we do in converting any normal random variable to standard normal random variable. We don't have to worry about mean here because we have taken mean 0, but mean need not be 0. In fact, if you relax the first condition, that is y0 equal to 0, so if you have y0 equal to say some constant c, then this is known as Brownian motion with a drift or Wiener process with a drift. Okay, so instead of starting from 0, if we start from some non-zero position, then it becomes process with a drift, because the mean would get affected by that much. Okay, so mean would always be C instead of 0. Okay, and one more property, that Brownian motion is continuous everywhere but nowhere differentiable. So sample paths of Brownian motion are continuous with respect to t. It's continuous everywhere, means for every t it is continuous with respect to t. However, it is nowhere differentiable, so with respect to t. So for no t it is differentiable. So basically Brownian motion is modeling fluctuations which are very random. They are not very well behaved. There are extremes. Okay, as a result it is, and you can see here variance is increasing with t, right? Variance is a function of t. Variance is sigma square t, so variance increases with t. So as you go further and further, the process becomes more and more unpredictable. Okay, so it is like there are many random fluctuations, so it is nowhere differentiable but it is continuous everywhere. Okay, in fact that's how the study of Brownian motion was initiated. Okay, if you remember, you must have heard this word Brownian motion in physics. Okay, so when liquid is, the liquid molecules undergo this force of Brownian motion, so they collide with each other and the resultant motion is Brownian motion. Or in air, when you have small dust particles, they collide with each other and then the direction of the movement changes as a result of this collision, so they are also modeled via Brownian motion. So all such random perturbations, they are modeled via Brownian motion, and we are going to see that stock prices would be modeled via what is known as geometric Brownian motion or exponential Brownian motion. So what do I mean by that? So if yt is a Brownian motion, then e raised to yt, what can I say about distribution of e raised to yt? E raised to yt will have log normal distribution, because yt is normal distribution, so log of e raised to yt would be yt. It has normal distribution, so e raised to yt has log normal distribution, and because it is log normal, it would always be taking positive values. Hence we are going to model share prices via this e raised to yt, which is known as exponential or geometric Brownian motion. Okay, exponential or geometric Brownian motion. By the way, you should always write B for Brownian capital, because it is coming from name of a scientist, Brown. Okay, Robert Brown. So B should always be capital. Okay, so these are few basic properties of Brownian motion. We are going to study few more properties related to conditional expectation of random walk as well as conditional expectation of Brownian motion. But for that, we need to theoretically study conditional expectation in detail. You have studied conditional expectation, conditional distribution, etc. But we need to study it from measure theory approach, so that we can appreciate properties of conditional expectation as random variable, and then use it to study or define a new concept known as martingale. So it would be a slightly longer discussion, so I would stop here for today. We'll consider that in the next lecture. Thank you.